Hi and welcome to the Dare to Be Healthy show. This is Alia Almoayed, your host, and I'm sitting today with athlete Pam Boteler. And I'm very excited because Pamela has a fantastic story. She's actually on a visit to Bahrain these days, so I caught her, and I'm hopefully going to get a lot of inspiring stories from her today. Pamela, it's so nice to have you in Bahrain.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here in this country, and I'm so excited to have met you.
Good. Thanks. I wanna go right in. I wanna jump straight in, and I want people to know your story, your background. What kind of an athlete are you?
Well, I'm a sprint canoeist by trade, which is Olympic style canoeing, high kneel, and I can explain that a little bit later. And I did that for about 10 years, and lately I've been doing outrigger canoe racing, which is Hawaiian style paddling. So I'm a paddler by trade, and I've been in paddle sports since 1992, so for about 20 years.
Okay, fantastic. Now the reason we're talking is because we have nutrition in common. Obviously, I know you are very keen on keeping yourself healthy, and I know you are doing a very interesting diet these days. You're doing the Dr. Doug Graham theory, at least the 80-10-10. Now this is the book, which Pam gave me yesterday as a gift, and I'm so thankful for that. But apparently it's a diet that's taking the world by storm, and it's also very specific. It works very well with athletes, and I know you've tried it, and you're a fantastic athlete, and you've tried it and it works. Tell us a bit about what led you into this diet.
Well, I went through a several years evolution of going from the standard American diet, the SAD diet, to slowly removing meats and grains and dairy. And by 2006, I finally started to eliminate the last bit of fish and dairy. By 2007, I was fully vegan, but I was still eating a lot of cooked foods and a lot of condiments and high fat. And I was training very intensely up until about May of 2007, and I had a lot of work issues going on. There was a lot of just high stress environment, and I was eating fairly well, but I just got to a point that there was so much going on that my body started to break down, and I experienced a bit of a burnout crash in May of 2007, and about a month after that, it was sort of a emotional crash as well. There was just so much going on, and this is, I will emphasize that it's not just about the food that we eat, it's about everything else going on in our life as well.
Spiritually,
so I did have a bit of a mental, physical, emotional, spiritual collapse. And I went through actually for 2 weeks, I really couldn't leave my house, and I really couldn't get off the couch. And I think at that point I was ready for change, but it wasn't just change, because change doesn't happen until it's more painful not to change. And at that point I was pretty much ready for transformation, where going back was never again an option. And I had been following a man named Robert Cohen, the Not Milk Man, for a couple of years in his Not Milk columns, and he was the one that actually encouraged me and educated me off of dairy. But I met him via one of his articles, and we communicated a couple of times, and he ended up writing an article about me. And in that article, which was part of his Yahoo email listserv, Dr. Doug Graham is a member of his listserv, and Dr. Doug Graham read about my story, and he contacted me and said, if you ever need any help, just let me know. And that was my first contact with Dr. Graham, and I had already...
He wanted to help you as an athlete?
He wanted to help me as an athlete.
Because he's helped other athletes
Because he's
before?
helped other athletes.
Okay.
He didn't know any of my personal story of all the other stuff that was going on.
Okay.
And I was just so excited because I had already started reading his material, and I really thought it was good stuff. And I contacted him, and we immediately started exchanging emails, and within 2 months he said, okay, are you ready to start 80-10-10 raw vegan? And I said yes. And I immediately started on a 1 week 30 bananas a day. And I did that for a week. I actually had one of that was the beginning of my coming out of the cocoon, or basically coming out of my black hole. And I have to say that it was at that moment that I knew that I wasn't going to go back to the way I was living and eating before. And I was raw all raw, low fat, for maybe a month or two. and I still was eating a little bit of cooked foods in the months after that. But since then, I have had periods where I'm 100% low-fat, raw vegan, and in periods of intense training, high competition, high stress. But I'm probably more 80 to 90% raw, but I still maintain a low-fat, vegan diet. And that has helped me, that has kept me competing to the age of 43. And I've actually been able to maintain my fitness levels, and if not, do more personal bests in my competition. And just in 2010, I did participate in the World Championships again, and we did set 2 new US records for the particular distances that we were in. So I felt really proud that I've taken a holistic approach to my training, to my health, to my lifestyle, and I could make that work for me as an older athlete as well. And this is definitely taking the world by storm, and people are starting to realize that in order to be a live body, you need to eat live foods. And
well, let me ask you this. When you read the book, or when you had started, before you heard from Dr. Graham, did you not think it was a bit out there? I mean, especially for an athlete. I mean, athletes watching this now might be gasping that first you're vegan and raw, which is not the norm in the athletic world. I mean, we're talking athletes, protein shakes, meat, protein. So to be vegan and to be raw is kind of going against the norm. But when you were reading it in the first place, I know you were very excited when he contacted you, but did you not think that it was a bit extreme when you were reading it in the first place?
Yes and no. I was actually intrigued by it because I had been sick for so many years. Sick meaning I had struggled with an eating disorder for over 20 years. So my body had already been a bit messed up a little bit. And so I was struggling with that physically and emotionally. And I looked at this as such a simple way to not burden my body anymore, and at the same time give it the absolute best nutrition that I could get. And it did seem extreme, but when you're feeling so bad, you get to the point where it can't get any worse. So I saw a light when I read this book. It felt right. And I really can't explain it any other way. I thought that I was reading about it. I had read about more vegan bodybuilders. I read the success stories in Dr. Graham's book. So obviously there were people that were working with him. He worked with Martina Navratilova for a couple of years. And so she's always been an inspiration to me. So when you read about the athletes that he's worked with, of course, success leaves clues. So you want to follow in the path of people that are successful. And that's exactly what I did.
Well, tell us about, I know we had this discussion yesterday about different athletes who've done it, and I keep hearing this over and over again about athletes saying, my transition into becoming vegan was great, but my transition from vegan to 80-10-10 was a whole leap, which is much bigger than anything I've ever done before. So what about it gives you that edge as an athlete, since we're talking about you as an athlete? What gives you that jump from being a good athlete to a fantastic athlete?
Well, again, it's not all about the food. There is part of his philosophy is you need to get the purest foods possible, whole, fresh, ripe, raw, preferably organic, but conventional if you can't get that, local. But fresh air, sunshine, you need to get sleep. It's one thing that many of us, athlete or not, do not get enough of is sleep. Fresh water, physical exercise, positive relationships. I don't care how good of an athlete you are or how good you eat. If you do not surround yourself with positive people, positive energy, your own way of thinking and talking to yourself, our cells listen to us every day and they grow in accordance with how we live. And so I really took an honest, holistic approach, but the number one foundation was the things that I was putting into my mouth. And
run us through a typical day. I know in the raw vegan world, there's all these terms of, are you 100% or are you less, or are you Dr. Graham? Or, I mean, it's very difficult. Even when you're healthy, there's all kinds of levels of healthy. So where do you stand, or do you even categorize yourself?
I appreciate that question, because that's been something that I've struggled with, and it's been something that has bothered me about the raw movement, and that when I was gravitating to being vegan, there's this immediate political connotation to being vegan, that you're an animal rights activist, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I came into it more from a health perspective. Then as I went more raw, I gradually felt separated from the friends and sort of community that I had left. And then I got closer to the raw vegan, and I was raw for, you know, a short period of time, but I never stayed raw. I kind of just dipped back and forth, and as I'm transitioning. So I never felt 100% like everybody else in that community,
on either
but
side.
I also felt not a part of that community too. And there was an article done about me, and I was very honest in that I'm not 100% of the time, but I am doing everything that I can for myself, and making decisions for myself, and making intelligent choices. And there were some people that were in the community that were, quote, perfect, I guess. They didn't really like that I was being categorized as in the community, when in their view I wasn't perfect. And I felt like that's been maybe something that our community can work a little bit better on, and not being so judgmental. It's the direction that people are moving. We need to give reinforcement to that, and that's what I want to do, is give encouragement to people that what direction are you moving, what types of education are you giving to yourself so you can make more intelligent choices. So I really don't like labeling myself.
Much easier.
It's a lot easier. I mean, I don't even like to say that I'm vegan, because you can be vegan and eat donuts and spaghetti and potato chips all day and be fat and unhealthy and slow and sluggish. And that's exactly what was happening with me. Was I was eating a lot of cooked food before I was doing this, and it wasn't necessarily the best food, but I was still vegan.
Yeah. So you could be vegan and healthy, or vegan and unhealthy still. Yeah.
Exactly. But the purpose of where I'm focused is a high fruit, low fat. And this distinguishes this particular philosophy from a lot of the other, let's say, plant-based diet. A lot of people go vegan and they're eating a lot of salads, and they're eating a lot of grains, and a lot of starchy foods, and a lot of fat, and a lot of salt, a lot of condiments. So they're still kind of missing getting back to nature and eating foods in their natural state, but eating foods as the primary source of your calories, fruit, which has the highest nutrient to calorie ratio.
So how many fruits a day do you eat?
I'll give an example. I work full time, and so I'm very busy, so I'll make smoothies in the morning. I have a Vitamix, so that's 85 ounces or 90 ounces of liquid. I might put 10 bananas into a blender. So I might have 10 bananas for a meal, but I might drink them rather than eat them. Or a favorite smoothie as of late is pears and strawberries and bananas, and blending that in the blender. I do try to eat as much fruit as possible, at least 1,500 calories of my caloric intake per day I like to get from fruit as a bare minimum. And that's just me trying to live and balance everything that I'm doing. If I can get 2,000 calories in, that's great. But I also don't like to characterize what I eat on a given day, because it varies. I might have higher level activity of one day, I might not be doing anything on the next day. So
should you eat, I mean, the theory is the whole 80-10-10 theory is that it's 80% fruit, is that correct?
It's actually 80% carbohydrates, 10% protein, and 10% fat. But those are the 10 and the 10 are actually upper limits.
Yes.
And the China study actually talks about anything above 10% of protein leads to predictable health decline.
Yes.
And many research studies already show that above 10% fat, roughly, in your diet is going to lead to problems such as diabetes, candida, and any sugar type problems. So even if I am eating cooked foods, I still try to keep it low fat and low protein. That's just the nature of the types of foods that I'm eating. Fruits are, but low is kind of a misnomer, because why do we need any more than what our mother's milk gave us when we were born? If mother's milk was 5 to 6%, why do we need 15 to 20% as adults? It does, logically, it doesn't make sense.
And how has that elevated your game? I mean, in terms of sports, has that lessened the side effects? Has that increased recovery time, or what have you noticed anything specific that improved once you started 80-10-10?
Yes, recovery is better. I am an older athlete, so recovery is a little bit of an issue. That's why I try to sleep as much as possible. But yes, recovery is better. During endurance races, I felt like I had an extra reserve inside of me, where I wasn't feeling like I was burning on the inside. I felt like I could kick into that second gear, and that's really played into not only my endurance competitions, but even my sprint competitions. I have food that's gone into me, and it's been digested, assimilated, utilized, and it's going to go away. Other food sits in your body for a much longer period of time, and the last thing you want to do is go into competition feeling like you have something stuck in you.
Yeah.
So as an older athlete, I feel like I've been able to maintain my game and go against girls that are younger than me, even maybe men that are younger than me.
I'm so impressed by your record. It's fantastic to hear. I mean, your wins and your competitions, it's just amazing to hear. And to hear that somebody has done that vegan, it's fascinating. It shows you how much the body is capable of, and how much it does matter what you eat.
It does matter, and there are going to be plenty of people that are going to argue. The paleo diet is making a big comeback, and I think what's important for people to look at again is look at what you're eating, but also look at what you're not eating. Look at how you're sleeping, look at how you're living. So high performance has multiple components. Living healthfully has multiple components. And I think the bottom line is people will look at me and try to talk me out of what I'm doing, or they might want to argue with me. But for me, I have found a path that works for me, and that if I am looking to get the most out of me and to live optimally and to perform at my highest level, given my age or that I work full time, this is where I am. And I can't speak enough to what Dr. Graham has done for me as a friend, and the community that we're in. And I think that the athlete community in particular, there's a lot of really good information out there about athletes, raw athletes that are doing great things. Harley, Durian Ryder, you've probably seen him on the internet, but Michael Arnstein is running marathons and ultra marathons, Grant Campbell, ultra marathons. But there are a lot more people. Some people may think this is more of an endurance sport. Well, if you're just a marathon runner, you can just eat fruits. But if you're a power athlete, then you really need to eat protein. Well, that's not true. I did sprint canoe, which is a 55-second, 50-second race, or a 2-minute race. That's a speed endurance type of competition. It tends to be more powerful athletes. There's a lot of big athletes, but bigger doesn't necessarily mean stronger.
Yeah. And what has, it's hard going against the norm socially when you're eating something like that. So how do you deal with people's comments, people's criticisms, or maybe even family who are worried about you, quote unquote, you're not eating enough, or how are you going to survive on just fruits? And how do you deal with all of that? I mean, has that made you less social? Or do you have a line that you use for everybody? How do you deal with that?
It's a great question, and probably one of the biggest issues and biggest challenges that people can deal with. For example, if I'm going out with friends, I may call a restaurant ahead of time and ask them, this is what you have on the menu. Can you accommodate me in this way? If you have fruit on the menu of garnishes, can I have it as a whole plate? If you have bread served with your hummus or whatever, can I just have a plate of the vegetables? And I call ahead of time so it's not an issue at the table, but I learned that the hard way. My family has been very supportive. I think what I do if I'm going to someone's home, I actually offer to bring a salad. I bring a big bowl of fruit. So I bring something to share. So you have your own food, kind of. I bring it and you eat it. I actually do. That has happened, and I bring a big salad bowl to share, and they have their little salad bowl in a little cup, and I have mine in my big plate. So it does become a topic of conversation, and it is very awkward, because the last thing you want to do when you're sitting down at a meal with people is to make the conversation about you, or for them to feel guilty that in some way that they're being judged, and then they become defensive by virtue of you just having something on your plate. It's a silent message and a silent communication that happens, and you just have to be aware that that's going to happen, and just go into the exchange positive, go into the exchange talking about other things rather than the food. If they do want to engage in conversation, do your best to answer questions, but try to steer the conversation away. I would love to talk with this about you maybe at another time, or what would you like to know? So that there are strategies that you can probably we can talk about later of how to deal with this, but sometimes it can go down a rabbit hole, and people say, well, where do you get your protein from? And I say, I don't know, I haven't had a protein deficiency in 43 years, and my nails grow. And so yes, so calling ahead of time, bringing my own food, eating before I go to a social event, that helps. During practices or after practices, I typically have food with me, so I'm not starving and hungry. One of the biggest pitfalls is that we're not prepared, and that's when
you don't plan enough.
You don't plan enough, so that's when you're going to eat something that you don't want to eat because you're hungry. And like here, I'm traveling, and I haven't really had everything that I've wanted to eat. It's really tough, but you do everything possible to plan and prepare and ask for support. Now that I know that you're here, next time I come back to Bahrain, I'm gonna have you have a contact for where you're gonna go.
Well, do you ever have doubts about that it's working or that it's good for you? No. You've never hit the wall, for example, while you were training or at a race and thought, okay, this might not be working?
No, I've never blamed this way of eating, because my belief is that something's happening in my own implementation of it.
Okay, that you've done something wrong, that's why it's gone wrong.
I've done something that hasn't worked for me. Yeah. And I'm doing something I'm not quite following maybe at 100%. But I think the bottom line is you have to continue to ask yourself and to listen to your body. And that's one of the things that happened to me when I originally went on Banana Island. It's a strange concept, but honestly, it made me start to listen to my body. I was actually feeding myself. I was getting 3,000 calories a day. I had a great training week. I was sleeping. I lost 7 pounds training 12 hours that week, eating 3,000 calories a day. By day 4, from bananas only. Okay. And by day 4, it was getting a little emotionally hard and mentally hard, because I missed having the salt. I missed having that kind of cooked, the spices. There's a comfort that comes from that cooked food and those processed foods. And coming from someone that has had a history of problems with eating and maybe using food to soothe in any way, which most people do. I think people are lying if they say that they don't use food or alcohol or other things to divert themselves and to soothe themselves. That completely strips you, and it actually forces you to sit with whatever's happening and let it run through you. Storms aren't bad. You just have to be able to let them pass
and see what comes
out of it, because there's a lot of truth that comes out of it, and you learn a lot about yourself if you give your body and your mind and your spirit an opportunity to really get in touch with what's going on, instead of covering up, and then all you're doing is building it up for the next time that you hit a wall. And then all of a sudden you're just going to crash. And I think that's what happened to me in 2007. You spend so much time not focusing on what's going on. You're diverting your attention away from it. You're soothing yourself. You're not addressing the issues that are going on. And your body's going to stop you before something else stops you.
So you can go all the way. I mean, you drop to your knees, and then you get up and go in the other direction.
Exactly.
But you have to, at some point, go all the way down to pick yourself back up.
Exactly. And change doesn't happen until it's more painful not to change. But transformation is really when going back is never again an option. And that's the point that I reached in 2007.
Well, isn't it, just from a taste perspective, isn't it difficult to just have the sweetness of fruits all the time? I know you're supposed to have 10% and 10%, but 80% carbs and say having 10 or 30 bananas even a day, it might be, again, the theory might be a bit extreme for some people, but even just from a taste perspective, isn't it too sweet?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I still eat salads, I still eat vegetables.
To counteract
absolutely.
that,
Yeah, and Dr. Graham actually promotes that as well. He promotes that I think maybe 2 to 3% of your calories should come from greens. That's a lot. That's maybe 2 heads of lettuce. Okay. I might eat 1, but that still is a lot for people. But nuts and seeds are still a small part of the diet program. So that is part of giving yourself a little bit of that counter taste. Yeah. I would not be able to be a 100% fruitarian.
Fruit, of course.
Yeah. I mean, there are different types of fruits that are more sweet and less sweet, but I really want that kind of vegetable mix, kind of maybe tartar taste. You know, sun-dried tomato I might want to mix in a salad dressing. So go wild, you know?
Yeah. You had a twinkle in your eye there.
Twinkle in my eye there, yeah.
As you said that.
Yeah, and there are some really great recipes out there.
Yeah.
Dr. Graham's put out some recipe books. Frederic Patinat has put it. There's so many people have come out with ways to make good salad dressings that don't have any oil in it. So there are things that you can do to help dress up your food to make it give you some of that taste without having to cook it, without having to put a lot of salt on it, and you're just going to take yourself back. You're still going to keep yourself connected to the comfort foods of before. I'm not saying any of that is wrong. I still go out to dinner. I still eat cooked food. I'm not 100%. I'm probably more 80 to 90%. And I still go out and I want to enjoy myself. But again, that's my intelligent choice for me.
Of course.
And there is no right or wrong. There are only consequences. And you choose your own path. Yeah. And for right now, I feel really good about where I am and what I'm doing. And I just think that this is the future, and you're going to see more athletes going vegetarian, more going vegan, and then more going raw vegan. And I think you're already seeing that now.
It's a bit confusing, I think, for people, because every time you think you found the method that works, or you think you're being healthy, then something new comes up. And the purpose of this interview is not to say this is what you should do. It's just to say there's so many different theories out there. And it's nice to see what you're doing and what he's doing and what different people are doing. And I just find it very interesting to see something working for an athlete, because that's a whole different requirement, a physical requirement that's needed there. And messages are mixed up. Well, one day some people are saying olive oil is good, then you're saying oil is not, and you're completely confused. And I think people miss the point that you try it and you see if it works for you. It's not what works for me and I tell you what to do.
Exactly.
Does it work for you? Does it feel right? Does it make you happier? Are you bouncing out of bed, or are you drying yourself in the morning? So,
again, the way I feel, there is no good or bad. There is only you and the choices that you make for yourself. And for me, there are certain consequences that I experience for eating a certain way that you wouldn't experience. And I think that's where I certainly don't like other people being judgmental against me about what I'm doing, and that's why I work extra hard to not be judgmental. And I want to support someone to do what you feel that you need to do, but continue to search and continue just to be really honest with yourself. And that's all that you can ask for people. Just
different ideas.
Be open to different ideas, and I applaud people for wanting to try new things and for wanting to raise their game. I have this saying, raise your game, rig your life for success. It's kind of corny, but I never want to settle for where I was yesterday or today. I always want to find a way. What can I do better? What did I learn today? And that's honestly what I take that into my athletic life. It's in my personal life. It's in my professional life.
Well, tell us about, speaking of professional life, tell us about your passion. I know you got me this t-shirt yesterday, and it's tell us more about Women Can. This is, what is it exactly? I know you're very passionate about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Women Can International is a group of men and women. It's just a virtual group of men and women, and our mission is to achieve Olympic status for women in Olympic canoeing. It's been an Olympic event for men since 1924, exhibition events 1936 were official events, and it's in flat water, sprint, canoeing, and into whitewater, slalom canoeing. And we are part of sort of the last generation of sports that prohibit women from racing at the Olympic level. And Women Can was started by a Canadian woman in 1998, and so we've been going for 14 years now, fighting for Olympic
has it
status.
Been allowed? No?
It's not been allowed yet, but we do have World Championships events. We have international competitions at the continental level. More countries have events at the national level, so we're trying to build at the grassroots level. But until we get Olympic status, countries will not get money in order to actually fund programs and fund athletes. So we're kind of at a chicken or an egg. Show us the athletes, we'll show you the events.
Okay.
And we're at a point where women's ski jumping, they just achieved Olympic status for the 2014 Winter Olympic Games. Women's freestyle skiing, they achieved Olympic status for 2014. So slowly women are starting to get their equal status to the men, but this is the final frontier for the Summer Olympics is Olympic canoeing. And our target is 2016, and it's exciting to see more women in the Middle East and even Africa picking up the sport, and we're just excited to see women be able to do what they want to do. Picking up canoeing. Okay, yes, it's slow. Yeah. More women are doing kayak because it's an Olympic event, but slowly they'll start to pick up canoeing. But if they're interested, we just feel that if they're interested, let them do what they choose to do.
Yeah.
Don't bar them just because they're a woman.
Yeah. Well, what have you? Yesterday we were talking about this very briefly. I mean, you travel around the world, and you're in the Middle East now, and you are asking somebody about women in sports. I know you ask that question to a lot of the people you meet. What have you felt about Arab women or Muslim women in general? Do you feel that there is an interest in sport? Do you feel that they're barred because of the way they dress or the way they have to cover up? Are there any sports that they can or cannot do?
Well, I'm still learning, and from what I'm learning, women are still barred because they're women in many countries. More countries are coming out and giving women opportunities. I saw an article on some of Afghanistan women who are learning boxing, and they're planning on competing in the Olympics hopefully someday. And more countries have women in kayak, and there are Muslim countries that are participating in soccer, but it's very controversial with Iran and some Jordanian players who were barred from competition early in 2011 because they were covered up wearing the hijab. But I do see more women competing, but for some reason the hijab is a issue of concern for safety. There are religious issues where the Olympics, it's not supposed to be a religious statement or a political statement. So it's very complicated. My feeling is just let a woman compete. Let her do what she wants to do. But on the flip side, I want her to be safe. I want the competitors to be safe. But there are limitations to a woman who chooses to wear a hijab or to cover up. She's not going to be able to swim. She's not going to play beach volleyball. There are sports that will naturally, they won't be able to do, but that's their choice.
Yeah.
So, but I'm excited that more countries are opening doors for women. The International Olympic Committee just required Saudi Arabia and Qatar to add at least one woman to their Olympic delegation, or they would have been barred from the Olympics. So they did add one woman.
They found one.
They found one. But I know there are girls that are doing sports, but it's sort of like, less than a year before the Olympics.
Not Olympic level.
They're not Olympic level yet. So in order for a woman to be at Olympic level, you need to train them just like the men. Not only do we want Olympic status, we want the same environment for success. We need the same, the same type of equipment that's good for us. We need access to the same sports trainers and same coaches and psychological training and medical training. The same environment for success that the men get, the women should have. You can't expect us to achieve going from 0 to 60 miles an hour and just compete at an Olympic level having little equipment or no coaching. And that's really where we are right now. But the good news is we're making progress, and wherever I go, I encourage women to pursue their passions, to pursue their dreams, that there's a community of women out there that will support them. And Women Can International we're an organization that's going to help any woman who wants to do something. We will connect you with the people that can help you.
And where can people go to get more information about you or about what you do?
My website currently is justcanuit.com, but my new website is coming out within the next 2 weeks, hopefully 3 weeks, and the address will be womencanintl.com for Women Can International.
Okay.
Yes, but justcanuit.com will go automatically to that new site. So that's a new project of mine that we're really excited about.
Okay. Pam, thank you so much. You're such an inspiration to me personally, and I hope to many people who watch this, and I hope to do this again.
Thank you. I do too. I so appreciate you and everything that you're doing. Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you for watching. That's it from me. This is your host, Alia Almoayed.